The old cemetery sprawled across the heart of a small town in rural America, its weathered gravestones standing sentinel to centuries of history. A hallowed ground that cradled the stories of the departed, it was guarded by a weathered wrought iron fence that creaked softly in the wind. For generations, the town's residents had entrusted the security of this sacred place to a line of custodians, one of whom was Edward Carter. Edward, a grizzled man in his late 50s, had been the night watchman of the cemetery for over 2 decades. He patrolled the grounds with a flashlight in one hand and a set of jangling keys in the other, his steps echoing through the silent rows of tombstones. The graveyard was a silent companion to his solitude, offering a sense of peace that he had grown accustomed to over the years. One moonlit night, however, the tranquility of the cemetery was shattered. The distant howl of a lone wolf seemed to pierce the silence as Edward made his rounds. The air hung heavy with an otherworldly stillness, and an uneasy feeling settled in the pit of his stomach. As Edward approached the oldest section of the cemetery, where weathered stones bore inscriptions worn away by time, he felt an unusual chill in the air. The beam of his flashlight flickered, casting dancing shadows among the ancient oaks that loomed like silent sentinels. A whisper of wind rustled the leaves, carrying with it a mournful sigh. Edward shook his head, attributing the strange sensations to his overactive imagination. He tightened his grip on the flashlight and continued his patrol. The night wore on, and the cemetery seemed to come alive with shadows. Edward caught glimpses of fleeting figures out of the corner of his eye, only for them to vanish when he turned to look directly. The air was thick with an unspoken presence, and the gravestones seemed to whisper tales of the departed. In the heart of the graveyard, Edward stumbled upon a neglected mausoleum, its heavy doors creaking on rusted hinges. The air within was damp and musty, and the dim light from Edward's flashlight revealed cobwebs that clung to forgotten corners. As he stepped further inside, the temperature dropped, and a shiver ran down his spine. In the faint glow, Edward noticed a flickering candle at the end of a dark corridor. The flame danced as if guided by an unseen hand, casting eerie shadows that seemed to stretch and contort. A voice, barely audible, beckoned him forward, whispering words that stirred the deepest recesses of his soul. Compelled by an unknown force, Edward followed the corridor deeper into the mausoleum. The air became heavy with the scent of ancient incense, and the shadows seemed to coil around him like serpents. He reached a chamber adorned with faded tapestries and a stone altar upon which an ancient tome lay open. The voice grew stronger, and Edward felt a spectral presence enveloping him. The room pulsated with energy, and the temperature dropped further. The words etched into the open book seemed to writhe, rearranging themselves into a language that he struggled to comprehend. Suddenly, a figure materialized before him, a ghostly apparition draped in ethereal robes. Its eyes glowed with a soft, haunting light, and its outstretched hand held a quivering candle. The apparition spoke in hushed tones, revealing a tale of unfulfilled promises and a lingering desire for closure. As the ghost recounted its story, Edward realized that it was the spirit of a long-forgotten soul buried in the depths of the cemetery. A tragic tale of love and loss unfolded, leaving an indelible mark on the spirit that wandered the mausoleum. Haunted by a sense of duty, Edward vowed to help the restless soul find peace. Together, they delved into the forgotten annals of the cemetery's history, uncovering long-buried secrets and untold tragedies that bound the spirits to the earthly realm. As the nights passed, Edward and the ghost worked in tandem to mend the fractured threads of the past. They traversed the cemetery, laying bare the stories of those who had been forgotten by time. Each revelation brought the spirits one step closer to redemption, and the once haunted grounds began to emanate an air of tranquility. Yet, as the ghosts found solace, a darkness began to stir. A malevolent force, drawn by the disruption of the spirit's quiet slumber, emerged from the shadows. It sought to ensnare the newfound peace, feeding on the lingering sorrow of the departed. Edward and the ghostly companions faced a formidable adversary, a specter from an era long past that sought to condemn the souls to an eternity of unrest. The mausoleum, once a sanctuary, became a battleground between the forces of light and darkness. In the final confrontation, Edward stood resolute, his heart intertwined with the fate of the spirits he had come to know. The air crackled with energy as the malevolent force unleashed its fury, but Edward's determination proved to be an unyielding shield. With the help of the spirits he had befriended, Edward channeled a surge of otherworldly energy, confronting the malevolent force head-on. The battle raged on, shadows twisting and colliding in a chaotic dance. At the brink of exhaustion, Edward's unwavering resolve tipped the balance. In a blinding burst of light, the malevolent force dissipated, its sinister presence banished from the cemetery. The mausoleum, once a battleground, echoed with the ethereal hum of departed souls finding peace. The air, no longer heavy with sorrow, felt crisp and invigorating. As dawn painted the sky in hues of orange and pink, Edward stood outside the mausoleum, gazing at the rejuvenated cemetery. The spirits, now freed from the shackles of their past, offered silent gratitude before fading into the morning mist. From that day forward, the cemetery bore a newfound serenity, and the whispers of the departed were replaced by a gentle breeze that carried tales of redemption. Edward, forever changed by the spectral encounters, continued his nightly patrols, no longer alone but accompanied by the gratitude of the spirits he had helped find peace. And so, the old cemetery stood as a testament to the resilience of the human spirit, where shadows of remembrance intertwined with the threads of time, weaving tales of love, loss, and the enduring power of redemption. Story 2. In the heart of Washington, D.C., nestled among the iconic landmarks and political institutions, lies the National Zoological Park, a sanctuary for a myriad of exotic creatures from around the world. During the day, families with children, tourists, and animal enthusiasts fill the pathways, marveling at the diverse collection of wildlife. However, as the sun sets, and the crowds disperse, a different atmosphere descends upon the zoo. It was a chilly autumn evening when Emily, a young zoologist, received a call from her supervisor, Drive Wilson. An urgent matter had arisen, and Emily was tasked with staying overnight to monitor the animals' behavior. The zoo had been experiencing peculiar incidents recently, unexplained noises, strange occurrences, and a growing unease among the staff. Reluctantly, Emily agreed to spend the night, armed with a flashlight, a radio, and a set of keys that jingled ominously in the silence of the empty park. The full moon cast eerie shadows, and the rustling of leaves added an unsettling soundtrack as Emily made her way to the nocturnal house, home to the zoo's more elusive creatures. As Emily stepped into the dimly lit building, the first thing she noticed was the stillness. Nocturnal animals that would typically be active at this hour were eerily motionless in their enclosures. The air was heavy with an otherworldly tension that sent shivers down her spine. Ignoring the nagging feeling of unease, Emily began her rounds. The flickering lights overhead added to the eerie ambiance, casting eerie glows on the walls. As she approached the enclosure of the elusive eye, she caught a glimpse of glowing eyes staring back at her from the darkness. The creature's elongated finger tapped rhythmically against the glass, a sound that echoed eerily through the silent exhibit. Deciding it was best to move on, Emily continued her rounds. However, as she reached the reptile house, a feeling of dread settled in her stomach. The temperature seemed to drop significantly, and a foul odor permeated the air. The reptiles, usually basking under heat lamps, were huddled together as if seeking comfort from an unseen threat. As Emily inspected the enclosures, she heard a soft whisper, barely audible over the hum of the heating system. It seemed to be coming from the dark corners of the room. Frozen in place, Emily strained her ears to listen. The whisper grew louder, forming indistinct words that sent a chill down her spine. "Leave," it urged, the voice echoing through the reptile house. Emily's heart raced as she fumbled for her radio, attempting to reach out to the security team. However, the radio emitted only static, drowning out her desperate calls for help. Undeterred, Emily pressed on, determined to uncover the source of the unsettling occurrences. As she approached the primate exhibit, the temperature plummeted further, and an unnatural darkness seemed to envelop the area. The once lively primates now clung to the shadows, their eyes reflecting an uncanny intelligence. The sound of footsteps echoed behind Emily, causing her to whirl around, flashlight in hand. The beam illuminated an empty pathway, with no sign of another living soul. A whisper echoed through the air once more, this time more urgent. "Leave before it's too late." Doubt and fear gnawed at Emily's resolve, but she pressed on. The nocturnal house awaited, its eerie silhouette against the moonlit sky. As she approached, a blood-curdling scream pierced the air, echoing through the empty zoo. Panic set in, and Emily sprinted towards the source, her flashlight cutting through the darkness. The source of the scream was the predator house, where the big cats roamed. Emily's breath caught in her throat as she found the entrance ajar. The once secure gates now stood open, and an unsettling silence hung in the air. Emily cautiously stepped inside, her flashlight revealing a scene of chaos. The big cats paced nervously in their enclosures, their eyes fixated on an unseen threat. The zoo security team arrived, their expressions mirroring Emily's sense of unease. Dr. Wilson, Emily's supervisor, approached with a grave expression. He explained that the incidents had escalated in recent weeks. Unexplained animal distress, mysterious shadows, and now, the disturbance in the predator house. Rumors of a paranormal presence had circulated among the staff, but they had dismissed them as mere superstitions. Determined to unravel the mystery, Emily and the security team decided to review the security footage. As they huddled around the monitor, the screen flickered to life, revealing the eerie events that had unfolded in the dead of night. The footage showed shadowy figures moving through the zoo, disturbing the animals and whispering ominous warnings. As Emily studied the screen, a sudden realization struck her: the figures seemed to emanate from the nocturnal house. With a newfound sense of urgency, the team rushed towards the source of the disturbance, their flashlights cutting through the darkness. As they entered the nocturnal house, a cold gust of wind greeted them. The temperature dropped drastically, and the air seemed charged with an otherworldly energy. The enclosures were empty, devoid of the once elusive creatures that called this place home. The team ventured deeper into the exhibit, following the eerie whispers that seemed to echo from the shadows. The unnatural darkness seemed to close in around them, and a sense of foreboding hung in the air. Suddenly, the whispers coalesced into a chilling voice that reverberated through the corridors. "You shouldn't have come." The team pressed on, determined to confront whatever malevolent force lurked within the confines of the nocturnal house. As they reached the heart of the exhibit, they discovered an ancient, ornate door that seemed out of place in the modern zoo. With trepidation, Emily pushed the door open, revealing a hidden chamber bathed in an otherworldly glow. In the center of the room stood a mysterious figure, cloaked in shadows. The air grew thick with tension as the figure turned to face them, its eyes gleaming with an otherworldly light. The figure introduced itself as the Guardian, a spirit bound to the zoo by ancient forces. It explained that the zoo's expansion had disturbed the delicate balance between the natural and supernatural realms, awakening dormant spirits that sought retribution. The Guardian warned that the zoo was cursed, and unless the balance was restored, the malevolent spirits would continue to torment the animals and those who dared to enter. To break the curse, the Guardian revealed a series of tasks that Emily and the team had to undertake. They had to gather rare herbs, perform ancient rituals, and seek the guidance of the spirits inhabiting the zoo. Failure to complete the tasks would result in the zoo's eternal damnation. As Emily and the team embarked on their quest, the nocturnal house became a battleground between the forces of light and darkness. They encountered vengeful spirits, faced challenges that tested their resolve, and delved into the forgotten history of the zoo. Along the way, they discovered that the zoo had been built upon an ancient burial ground, and the spirits of the displaced inhabitants sought restitution. As the team approached the final task, a sense of urgency gripped them. The malevolent spirits intensified their efforts to thwart their progress, unleashing spectral manifestations that tested their sanity. Emily, driven by a newfound determination, faced her fears head-on, guided by the wisdom of the Guardian. In a climactic confrontation, Emily and the team performed the final ritual, restoring the balance between the natural and supernatural realms. The malevolent spirits were banished, and a profound stillness settled over the nocturnal house. The ancient door sealed itself, concealing the hidden chamber from prying eyes. As dawn broke over the National Zoological Park, a sense of peace returned to the once turbulent grounds. The animals resumed their normal behavior, and the unease that had gripped the staff dissipated. The zoo, once plagued by supernatural forces, was now free from the curse that had tormented it for centuries. Emily, exhausted but triumphant, looked out over the tranquil zoo. The moonlit horrors of the night seemed like a distant memory as the first rays of sunlight bathed the enclosures. The National Zoological Park had been reclaimed from the clutches of the supernatural, and the animals once again roamed freely in their sanctuary. As visitors streamed into the zoo, unaware of the otherworldly events that had transpired, Emily couldn't help but smile. The guardian spirits had found peace, and the zoo stood as a testament to the delicate balance between the natural and supernatural worlds. The horror of the night had given way to a new day, and the National Zoological Park embraced its role as a haven for both the living and the spirits that called it home.